And I know Commissioner Day will be absent this evening.
We have a quorum, so let's go ahead and get started. The only commissioner that we're expecting that we don't have yet is Commissioner Lindermeyer.
Okay.
You're on mute, Casey.
Okay, I do have a quorum. We have 6 commissioners. Would you like me to read the roll call so you can all say aye, or did that happen right?
I think we have 5 commissioners.
Oh, okay.
But that's a quorum.
Chair Daly.
Here.
Vice Chair Morris.
Here.
Commissioner Lindemeyer. Commissioner Ye, who we knew would be absent. Commissioner Corrigan.
Here.
Commissioner Valadez.
Here.
And Commissioner Wang.
Here.
That is a quorum of 5.
Okay, so shall we go to the Pledge of Allegiance? Are you going to put the flag up, Casey? Or should we just go? Oh, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have a number of special presentations to start our agenda tonight. The first item is going to be a very enjoyable introduction of new staff.
Thank you, Chair Daly. I'd like to ask the following people to show yourselves. So we have our rec manager, Jamie Chu, Mary Jo Price, William Hannell, and Kiefer O'Hara. So what I'll do is I'll introduce each one and they will tell you a little bit about themselves and what their position is. And some of them have been here a couple of weeks, so they can share what they've been involved with so far. So first, I'd like to start with Mary Jo Price. She's our recently appointed Recreation Supervisor overseeing the Community Center. Welcome, Mary Jo. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. Okay, so just to share a little bit about me. Sorry, I just lost my video for a second. There we go. Before coming to the city of Los Altos, I worked at the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District. I was managing programs and operations for the Douglas Morrison Theater there. And prior to that, I have many years of experience in operations, customer service, management, program development with various nonprofits, including the Children's Creativity Museum in San Francisco and Tandem Partners in Early Learning, which is a literacy organization in San Francisco. It's actually across 3 counties. So that's a little bit about me. I'm super excited to get started. My position will be overseeing the new beautiful community center. And I'm so excited about that. And what we've been doing so far has, been preparing for opening. That's consumed a lot of what I've been doing. I've been learning a lot of the new systems that are in place. So I'm on a big learning curve to get caught up with everybody on everything at the center. And we're working on the opening. We're working on moving in, preparing for that. We're working on developing our policies and procedures that will be changing because of the new center. We are working on one of the things that I'll be doing is coordinating communications with all of our other civic center partners. And so we're working on that coordination, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of them and talking about how we can work together and how we can partner for the opening. Yeah, so those are some of the things that I've gotten started on in my 2.5 weeks in the position so far.
Thank you so much, Marie.
Sure.
All right, next, these next two positions are part-time positions, and we have with us Will Hannell, who's our recreation specialist overseeing teen programs. William.
Yes, hello. Nice to meet everyone. So just a little bit about myself. I worked previously for the city of Cupertino for the past 7 years, working in the recreation department, just working summer camps as a rec leader, as well as a senior rec leader, working at the teen center. And I'm also currently working right now with the city of Mountain View as an after-school education specialist and a summer site lead, where I oversee a specific summer camp and oversee the staff and the campers there as well. And within the past couple weeks, I'm still going through the orientation process. But one thing that my supervisor and I have been working on is trying to figure out specifics and what we are going to do with the new teen center that I will be helping with. So in regards to hours and how to get more teens to come into the teen center and finding ways to show off the new beautiful space that we have here. So I just want to say I'm very excited to meet everyone, and I'm very excited to work with all of you. And yeah, it's a pleasure to meet every single one of you.
Thank you, William. And now I'd like to introduce Kiefer O'Hara.
Hello, everybody. So I am the new rec specialist in facilities. I've been helping a lot with a lot of the new rentals and all that type of stuff. But a little bit about myself. I've been working the last 3 to 4 years in Parks and Recreation in a variety of different roles, specifically jumping between teen programs, facility rentals, and sports programs. I've been helping kind of in a support role with a lot of those, making sure that administrative work gets done. Here, since I've been here the past 3 weeks, I've been helping with a lot of the preparing the buildings to be rented again as we kind of come out of COVID and indoor rentals become an option again. I'll be helping a lot with making sure that those buildings are set and prepared for renters to come in. I've been doing a lot of facility inventories of each of our facilities, making sure that we know how many chairs we have, how many tables, all that type of stuff, so that we know what we can rent. And then I've also been helping a lot with setting the new protocols and policies for our renters, because things will change with the new facility. So I've been helping a lot with that. I've also been talking to a lot of renters in the community. We've opened up our picnic rentals. So I've been talking to a lot of them as well and helping them get set up and start actually getting to use our outdoor spaces as well. So that's what I've been up to. Again, it's great to meet all of you guys and to get to be a part of this. So look forward to talking to you guys more in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Kiefer. Well, that concludes our introductions of our 3 new staff members. We're very excited and look forward to implementing programs and bringing people to our new center and our other facilities as well. So thank you.
Well, Mary Jo, William, and Kiefer, on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission and the residents of Los Altos, welcome to our community and to your new roles, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda, we have an informational presentation. I'm very excited to have with us tonight the Santa Clara County Office of LGBTQ Affairs, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what they do. I understand that there's a possibility we may have some public comment. We're going to hold public comment on this information item until after the presentation, so anybody who has an appetite to comment will have the benefit of having seen the presentation. And I will just remind everybody that this is a information item. We're not taking it up as an action item, and we won't be discussing any kind of policy recommendations, but there also is an opportunity for commission members to seek clarification and ask questions and learn about what this wonderful county office is all about. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn over the floor.
Thank you, Chair Daly. At this time, I'd like to introduce Daniel Moretti from the Office of LGBTQ Affairs.
Thank you so much, Chair Daly and Director Donna, and everyone for having us here. Really appreciate it. My name is Daniel Moretti. I'm with the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm going to quickly share my screen. So 1 second, and thank you for bearing with me. And are you seeing the correct full screen, or are you seeing the...
No, this is the presenter view,
Okay,
Daniel.
let's see. All right, we good now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks for your patience as I navigate the technology. Real quickly to just share a little bit about what I'll be talking about. Again, as an informational presentation, I'll share a little bit more about the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. I'm going to also share more about what are some ways or opportunities for more learning and education. So LGBTQ competency training, ways to create a welcoming environment and space, and then opportunities for partnering and collaborating with LGBTQ communities, and closing out to make sure to address any questions that might come up. And feel free during the presentation, I know there's a Q&A kind of function, if there's questions that come up that can be asked through there, and I'll make sure to address them. So just real quickly, wanted to share who is the team that makes up the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. We have many colleagues that are focusing on other areas, including our community outreach, our graphic design, community work, senior management analysts, and our community engagement. Although currently about 3 of our staff are activated at full-time disaster service work around COVID. In a nutshell, wanted to also share what our office does and our function and our mission. So overall, what our mission is to provide leadership and support for the well-being and longevity of LGBTQ communities in Santa Clara County through coordinated, integrated approaches. And so really we kind of look at our mandate as multi-pronged. So externally, we're supporting LGBTQ community members to thrive. And internally, we are supporting county offices and services to be LGBTQ affirming and LGBTQ inclusive. Our office is one of 6 offices that make up the Division of Equity and Social Justice. So we also are part of the team that's the Office of Women's Policy, Office of Gender-Based Violence Prevention, Office of Immigrant Relations, Office of Cultural Competency, and the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement. And we work really collaboratively so that the county takes an intersectional approach when it comes to our equity and social justice work. We consider our office what we call a programs and policy office. So we strive to meet our mandate by focusing on programs and policy. But to supplement that work, we like to lead with the data. So we also commission some research. We also support trainings both within our county and out in the community. And while we are not a direct service provider, we are collaborating a lot with direct service providers, whether it's through funding, collaboration, or doing coalition building. We do convene an LGBTQ service provider and community-based network to provide more opportunities for cross-section collaboration. We do also help support with case navigation and resource referrals. So community members or employees at other local cities or townships within the county or at nonprofits or service providers, they're seeking any type of resources that might support an LGBTQ community member or for themselves or their family and loved ones. They can always call our office and we can help to make referrals to those resources or also help to make warm handoffs as well. Wanted to also share a little bit about our history because we were very proud to be the first county level Office of LGBTQ Affairs that opened in the country in 2006. We were really, we originated through a status of LGBTQ health report that was commissioned by then Supervisor Ken Yeager in 2013. And that was the first time that the health experiences of LGBTQ community members were enumerated. And we found that there were a lot of negative health disparities that were facing the LGBTQ community. So then Supervisor Ken Yeager put forward the motion to create the Office of LGBTQ Affairs to help address those negative health disparities and help bridge the community to services, and also to focus on the county's internal mandate as well to be LGBTQ inclusive and part of their overarching diversity and inclusion mandate. There is, for the purpose of this presentation, I'll skip over the video, but there's a really powerful video that is on our website. If you go to sccgov.org/LGBTQ, that you hear from Supervisor Yeager around the purpose for creating the office and the referral that established our office. So I'll go ahead and pass through this. Just to share a little bit more about some of the work that we've done since our opening in 2016. So we've had a few firsts. We were the first county to raise the transgender flag in 2016. And then this year in 2021, we were the first county and actually first government entity to raise the intersex inclusive progress pride flag. We've also played a role in creating new resources within our county and institutions. So the New Haven Inn is a shelter that provides focused support for LGBTQ community members who are unhoused. We also have our Gender Health Center, which was the first of its kind in the South Bay. It's an all ages clinic that specializes in care for trans, non-binary, and gender diverse individuals. And we've also established at the county, the Q Corner, which is a really great new resource out of the Behavioral Health Services Department that provides access and linkages for LGBTQ community members to affirming mental and behavioral health supports. I'll talk a little bit more about the LGBTQ listening tour, which we convened in 2019. We went to almost every city within the county, but because of COVID had put things on pause. That was actually where we had the pleasure of connecting with Donna and heard about the work that we're doing and had that connection with the community. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. And we've also launched some initiatives such as providing all gender restroom signs throughout the county and convening events like our LGBTQ Summit. A couple of projects to highlight that are our current projects. We have some initiatives that we're focusing on collaboration across our county systems. So for example, we have our Support Out initiative that's really focused on well-being for LGBTQ youth, and especially LGBTQ youth of color who might be systems impacted either through child welfare or our probation department. We're also implementing our transgender recruitment and retention initiative, really to focus on creating more employment opportunities and creating more gender affirming workplace set environments for trans, non-binary, and gender diverse individuals. And then we also have our LGBTQ Health and Wellness Initiative. This is really focused on creating services, health, and both physical and mental health services that are LGBTQ responsive and inclusive, but also providing trainings across our systems to help build the capacity of our current providers to be affirming and responsive. And last, I'll just share real briefly, we also are running our LGBTQ Older Adults Initiative. This is in collaboration with a really great organization that's not too far away from you all. It's in Palo Alto by Avenidas. So they're running the Rainbow, the Avenidas, the Rainbow Collective, really great case management services, social connection opportunities, and other cultural competency services. And we're also implementing the LGBTQ older adult survey. So if there are any programs that are serving seniors within your community, we really encourage folks to refer them to take that survey so that we have a better understanding of experiences. So then we can help create new programs and services that are responsive to this community. We do share a variety of resources within the community, both from the county and community-based organizations on our website and across our social media. So this is just another opportunity if you're interested in connecting with more information, more programs or training opportunities where you can find us. I'll go ahead and move to the second portion and the last portion of the presentation, which is really focused on what are some opportunities to expand awareness and understanding so that really everyone can help provide more inclusive and more responsive services and programs for LGBTQ communities. So these are just a couple of ideas to consider, and again, for more education and awareness building. So the first is there's always opportunities to level up on training and to be a lifelong learner. So one is through LGBTQ competency training. Our office hoped to co-create this 30-minute online module with the health firm Cognito. And it's a online training that is really unique in the sense that it provides both didactic instruction on LGBTQ terminology, but it's also a conversation simulation. So it helps to build a participant's capacity to create a more inclusive work environment where LGBTQ staff and clients feel safe, valued, and respected. So it's animated and it's interactive, and you're put into two different scenarios. One where you are providing services as a employee to a community member who is a transgender woman, and her name that she uses is different than is in the system. So it's an opportunity to navigate through that situation. And then the other is, again, as an employee, you're in a break room, you overhear a colleague using discriminatory language against LGBTQ community members. So how you can help intervene within those type of situations. The Office of LGBTQ Affairs has purchased licenses for this training to make it available for all government employees and service providers throughout the county. So this online training is available for all City of Los Altos employees. And we have the contact information, or not the contact information, but the access information here on this slide, how you could log into Cognito, register for a free account, and have access to this free 30-minute training. Another consideration is thinking about what are ways that you can create a welcoming space. So the physical environment is one to consider, especially considering, the work that Parks and Recreation does, and that there are a lot of on-site and in-person programs that are being run. So the first, when thinking about physical space, is you can think about what are some visual cues that demonstrate a welcoming environment and LGBTQ inclusivity. So you'll see in the middle of this slide the We Stand With Community placard that also has the Progress Pride flag. Our office has those available. We can provide them upon request, as many as you would like. If you would want to put them up in rec centers or other communal spaces, shows a signal that LGBTQ community members are welcome and invited to the space. Similarly, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner on the badge that we also have the rainbow badge stickers, which is another opportunity to provide a visual cue that provides a sense of affirmation and inclusion. And you'll see on the bottom, our own county's parks team created a rainbow badge that they've been using, especially during June when we wrapped up Pride Month. Again, another opportunity to provide that visual cue. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see in a circle the pronoun badges. That's another opportunity, especially for employees who are in client-facing or client interaction roles. It's an opportunity to share what your pronouns are and helps to invite others to share what their pronouns are with you as well in communication so that we can make sure that everyone is respectfully addressing one another. We do recommend before implementing any of these visual cues of LGBTQ inclusivity is having a conversation with your team members about what that means, what are the values with having this displayed, so that everyone is on the same page, as well as has had some baseline training around LGBTQ inclusivity. Lastly, on the slide, you'll see what I kind of was mentioning earlier around how our office helped to support providing all-gender restroom signs. Another consideration is if there are, as per California law, any single stall restrooms should be designated as all gender. We can help to either provide or to help refer to where you could get this all gender restroom signage that can be displayed. And that's just another opportunity as well to provide a gender inclusive environment. So continuing with the topic of creating welcoming space, in addition to thinking about the physical space, also the way that employees and the team that's on site interacts verbally and through interpersonal communication is also really important and helps to create an inclusive space. So a real common, I think, or a real baseline start is thinking about the language that's used. And this is just to show, what are some opportunities to use more inclusive language. It's not at all to make anyone feel bad or shamed if they've used any of these terms, but just an opportunity to learn and potentially consider what are some ways that alternatives that are more gender inclusive. So you'll see on the left-hand side, there's some more, what you might have commonly heard terms that assume a gender or are gendered. So say you are greeting a group of individuals that are coming through one of the facilities or coming for an event. You might hear someone say, you guys, or ladies and gentlemen. That again, it's assuming genders and it's gendered language. We recommend trying using more inclusive language. So moving towards simple terms like you all or folks or everyone when you're interacting with large groups who have not shared what their gender is with you. Similarly, when thinking about pronouns, you might use gendered pronouns on the left that you're seeing, him or her, making an assumption based off of maybe the way someone looks or their mannerisms. But again, where really the best practices is not to assume anyone's gender and not to assume anyone's pronouns until they shared them with you. So instead of using those gendered pronouns, if you don't know, if they haven't already shared what they are, you can use more gender neutral pronouns like they, them, or theirs. Kind of continuing on, say there's, you're referring to an individual that's in the space, you might use a gender term like a boy or a girl, but you, again, not making the assumption of the gender, you can use words like child or kid that are more inclusive. Similar for adults, if you're using terms like lady or guy, you can instead use more inclusive terms like person. The next one, when you're thinking about greeting folks, I know that more traditionally, with the intent of respect, you might say hello, sir, or hello, ma'am. But again, that provides, or that is using an assumption of what someone's gender is. And put yourself, maybe in the space of someone who might be either transgender, non-binary, or gender expansive. And if their first interaction in coming into your space is someone greeting them, and even if they have the best intentions and they misgender them, or they say hello, sir, or ma'am, and that's not their gender identity, it might create a negative impression, or it might create a traumatic experience for the individual. So we recommend using more gender inclusive language. So you can simply drop the sir or ma'am and you can say hello or hi there or hello guest, using more inclusive terms. So similarly, when thinking about family configurations, more inclusive terms, rather than making an assumption of mom or dad, you can use terms like parent, guardian, or caretaker. And thinking about other gender terms, husband, wife, or girlfriend and boyfriend, not making an assumption of who someone is that they're dating, or what their sexual orientation is, or what the gender is of the individual. You can use terms like spouse or partner. And lastly, to kind of close out, Similarly, if you're, referring within family structures, rather than making an assumption of a gender by using brother or sister, it's not something that's already made aware what the pronouns or the gender identity is of the individual you're speaking about. You can use terms like sibling that are more inclusive. So the last portion that I'll share in terms of just some thoughts and some ideas to consider about what are ways to build more awareness, build more education, and think about ways that you can better support and provide affirming services and programs for LGBTQ communities are what are ways that you might consider partnering with LGBTQ communities. So just a couple of examples that we've put out here. So the first is consider if there might be opportunities for LGBTQ community input sessions, or maybe having an LGBTQ community advisor when it comes to the programs that you're developing. As I was mentioning before, our office convened our LGBTQ listening tour, where we went to just about every city and township within the county. And we really went to where the community was at, and we invited community members to share their experiences and to hear what type of programs, services they were looking for, so that we could factor that data directly from the community and their input and feedback into our work plans. So there's opportunities to, consider growing upon that. I know that we launched in 2019 the listening tour in Los Altos Hills, so there might be an opportunity to consider building upon that, or potentially bringing in advisors from the community that can provide that input as well. Another consideration to think about is what might be some opportunities to do outreach or tabling at LGBTQ events to help to connect those audiences to your programs and services. In August is when Silicon Valley Pride takes place. So that's one example to consider that's coming up soon. It's at the end of August and is going to be in person this year. And it could be another opportunity that you could consider outreach and having an opportunity to connect with LGBTQ community members within the region. And then the last is just considering, with all of the materials or programming that you're developing, thinking about ways that the LGBTQ representation or inclusivity might be able to be factored in. So you'll see some examples of some promotional materials that was done by our Office of the Census that includes LGBTQ inclusive imagery that really shows, the community members reflected. So then they see it's a program or it's a service that is also invited for them to consider or to participate in. So just a couple of ideas to also consider when it comes to what are ways to partner with LGBTQ communities when it comes to your programs and services. And with that, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that I can go ahead and see if there's any questions or answers, but or questions that have been populated through the presentation. But that really kind of sums up the presentation. Hope that you learned a little bit more about our office. Also want to provide the invitation to everyone if you want to learn more about our office or learn more about any of the programs, or say if there's anything that we could do to support, whether it's technical assistance or guidance or collaboration. We love to collaborate and connect, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you, Daniel. That was really great. Are there any questions perhaps from any of the commissioners for Daniel? Commissioner Valadez.
Hello, this is Janine Valadez. Thank you for your presentation, Daniel. It was excellent. I wondered if you could spend a little bit more time on the partnering opportunities. You listed the 3 areas and talk a little bit more. I got the second and third category of opportunities. They're explicit enough for me, but the first one, I need a little bit more. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more on the LGBTQ community input sessions and or advisors. Give me some more examples in that regard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Yeah, I think a couple of examples are like if say there's an opportunity, if you are opening a new center or if you're developing a new program, that you can host a like a listening session or an input session where you invite maybe leaders from the LGBTQ community, community organizations, and or LGBTQ community members to come and provide their input when it comes to services or programs, or a specific initiative, say if you're opening or launching a new center or location. So that could really look at a variety of different ways. We've seen them throughout the pandemic being done virtually. So it could be a Zoom meeting where as an opportunity you have maybe 2 to 3 questions that you're posing to the audience. You open it up and folks can provide their input either verbally or through the chat. When we did our listening tour, we did it in person. So we had a set agenda of what were some of the questions that we wanted to open, but we made sure to leave space for input from the community to help drive, so say maybe if some of the input they wanted to provide didn't necessarily fit directly into the questions or the program, there was still that opportunity. So those are some examples of like more like kind of like input sessions, whether it's virtual or in person. But the other consideration is if there are ever any advisory groups that are maybe already are being convened, or if there's any type of, I would say, advisory committees, just making sure that you are inviting, representation, diverse representation, across all identities, race, gender, and geographic location, but also considering, making sure that there's LGBTQ representation within those committees that are providing input, or those advisory groups that are providing input as well. I don't know if that helps to maybe illustrate some ideas or examples, or is there an area that I can maybe clarify a little more?
No, I think I got it. One follow-up question though is, can staff from your office, either directly or by referral, help us find facilitators for such activities?
Yeah, definitely. We would be happy to help to either connect with a facilitator or potentially support, just depending on, I think, what the scope is. So I'll make sure that I think on my last, on the slide deck, I think the last slide that I didn't go on had the contact information for our office. So I'll make sure that everyone has that as well. And definitely see us as a resource, and we can definitely support that.
That's great. Are there more questions from other commissioners? Vice Chair Morris.
Good evening. Thank you for being here and giving us this presentation. I have a couple questions, if I may. One is, do you provide support for parents? Do you have a parenting person that can help parents as they're dealing with their children that are maybe transitioning, choosing, what direction they want to go in life or they need to go in life? So that's one question. And if we ever had an event, would that be something that you could see being worked into the event?
Yeah, thanks so much. That's a really great question and a really important question. So there are, our office, since we aren't providing direct services, we are making referrals to the organizations that do that work. And there's a couple of really great organizations that do provide supports for parents, guardians, caretakers, and families and friends. So one is PFLAG San Jose / Peninsula. So it's serving pretty much the entire South Bay. They have multiple support groups, one for the Peninsula, one for San Jose, but of course it's open to everyone, and also one that's focused on parents and caregivers and family and friends of trans, non-binary, gender diverse individuals. And they also have one in English and in Spanish as well, within the PFLAG, this local chapter. We also have a really great resource called Trans Families of Silicon Valley. So they're serving all of Silicon Valley, and that's specifically for family members who have children who are either transgender, non-binary, or gender expansive. And then last, we also have through the LGBTQ youth space, which is a really great organization that's based out of San Jose, but serves all of Santa Clara County. They also have a support group. So all these examples I'm giving, I should have clarified, are peer support groups So they're led by peers, other individuals who are parents or family or friends of LGBTQ individuals that are really helping to create that support network and that peer network. So LGBTQ Youth Space has a really great group called Proud Parents. So it's parents, and they operate one group in English and then one in Spanish as well. And I know that all of them, the second kind of part of the question, could they potentially be integrated into an event? I bet they all would be, really happy to think about ways that they can, connect or provide information about their services or integrate into the events. And I would be happy to, follow up to help make introductions to these organizations as well.
Great, thank you. And then my other question was about Cognito. So you said it's for government employees. Is that what it's strictly for? So commissioners and so on can't go and do that, or are we allowed to? Is it a temporary thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and thank you for asking. The commissioners would be, we would consider that part of the government entity as, collaborators and stakeholders. So all would have access to the online training as well. It makes me excited that you're interested in taking the training, so we'll make sure that everyone also gets the information from the slide about the easy steps on how to access it. So it's available for county employees, also commissioners and volunteers, as well as any service providers. So say if there's a nonprofit or a for-profit, but they're providing a service with a contract with your agency, or sorry, with your city, they can also be provided with access to that training as well. And the nice thing about that is that it's online and on demand, so that individuals could kind of take it as their schedule allows. And we also have some great facilitator guides that go along with it, so that there are some discussion questions to consider after.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Daniel? Commissioner Corrigan.
And thank you, Daniel, for your presentation. I did have one question on the, maybe it's a bit more abstract, but it's the slide 11, the terminology that, inclusive language that you recommend people use. And I think my question really is this, it's almost like a free speech item. I know your intent is inclusive language, but as a government entity, should we be advocating specific language for people to use? Is this just a suggestion, or, dictating sort of terminology for speech, I think is something that people might find could be, could make other people feel excluded if they don't use the right terminology. So I guess I'm wondering about, as a government entity, if this impacts people's free speech, to be blunt. So I'm curious what the office thinks about this terminology rollout, if that's what this is part of.
Yeah, and thanks so much for that question. I think it's definitely not barring on anyone's, free speech. These are recommendations based off of best practices, and best practices when it comes to creating an environment that's welcoming and affirming. And I also should clarify too, it's not that we're recommending, or that the best practices are stipulating that terms like sir or ma'am are never used. What the best practice is recommending is that the assumption of which term to use for individuals is what is taken out of the equation, so that you're not making an assumption of someone's gender based off of the way that they looked, and therefore using gendered language that, based off of perception is what you think might be according with them. That instead you start with, more inclusive language, and then if the individual does, share what their gender is, or if they say, please address me with, those particular pronouns, or as you were mentioning, say if someone wants to be addressed by those terms, then, you have that invitation, you can use that language. But really it's about best practices, so that it's removing those assumptions and creating, I think, an environment that's inclusive for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel, I have a question for you about pronouns. I try to make it a habit to share my pronouns. And I have been asked why I do that. And I do that because I want to normalize sharing of pronouns. I find it to be respectful, and I think it's an important step to make others feel included and feel accepted, particularly if their pronouns might be different than my pronouns. So can you talk about that a little bit and I maybe encourage others to get on that train with us?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. I agree. The practice of kind of normalizing sharing pronouns or asking, about someone's pronouns if they haven't already shared it with you is a really good best practice. And really what it does is it helps to create an environment so that we all know how we can respectfully address one another. And often that's, the kind of language or explanation of say, I'm sharing my pronouns and someone, or say, maybe I share my pronouns and I ask the person, oh, what pronouns would you like me to use for you? If say they, take offense to that, or maybe they're not quite sure why I'm asking, I usually use that as an explanation. I just want to make sure I know how I can respectfully address you. So sharing what that intent is. And we do recommend with best practices that, when there are opportunities to include sharing of your pronouns. So for example, at the start of a meeting or possibly in your email signatures, or I see as you're doing, on Ring Central or Zoom, you could put in parentheses on your name, what your pronouns are, that if that's something, the invitation for everyone to consider doing that, but not making it be something that is forced or obligated. But something that folks can, opt in and, really like what you were mentioning to help normalize the practice. And also when we're inviting others to share their pronouns, it might be something for some people that they don't, for whatever reason, feel comfortable with, really having that space for folks to be able to pass and opt out so that they're invited, but not obligated.
Wonderful. That's a great explanation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Daniel? Vice Chair Morris.
I know. I'm sorry, I have one more. I probably just need to call the office and chat. I actually have two more. One, are you presenting to other commissions or to the city council? That would be, and if not, I would think maybe that would be a good idea. Secondly, if we chose to do one thing, just to begin with one thing in our city as a way to dip our toes into being more inclusive in a more visual way, a more open way, what would you suggest?
Yeah, those are really great questions, and would love a phone anytime. Feel free to call us. We'd love to chat. So the first question around presentations to other commissions and the city council. I don't. I've been with the county with this office for a little under 2 years. So from my knowledge, I don't think we have yet, but we, love to, kind of connect with other commissions and councils. So definitely, we'll explore more into that. We are collaborating with other cities when it comes to some of the presentations to their different groups, and also with some of the neighboring jurisdictions. Like we're doing a presentation next week with the San Mateo Commission, LGBTQ Commission. So, definitely can reach out to us if there's other groups that, a presentation might be helpful for. And the second piece, I really like that question because it's really, kind of action oriented and like what might be one takeaway. I think when it comes to the piece about the visual cues, I think from my perspective, it's kind of a two-prong. So hopefully this isn't cheating by, kind of sneaking something in. It's more about the actual implementation and then what are some of the procedures around it. I really think having the visual cues around either a safe space or we stand with community, the placards that are the LGBTQ inclusivity ones. That's a really nice first step because one, we can provide them free of charge. So there's not a barrier when it comes to the costs or having them made when it comes to those particular placards. But we've received resounding feedback from community, both through our listening sessions, but also anecdotally when we're meeting with them, both at our county facilities, but also in other jurisdictions, that seeing that is it actually goes a really long way for LGBTQ community members, but also family and friends of LGBTQ people. So it helps to let them know, pretty, I think in a pretty direct way, that they're invited and included in the programs and also in the particular facilities. So that I think is a really, I don't want to say easy, but there's pathways and supports to operationalize that through our office and also through many other providers that have safe space signs or other, kind of visual cues. The kind of cheat adding in the extra piece is making sure to have that conversation with staff about what that means to be a welcoming space. Because I think what we would want to avoid is that, the signs are up, but maybe there's interactions or, unintentional kind of interactions that might not be LGBTQ inclusive, that, so someone, might feel, see the sign that they're in a safe space, but then have an interaction where maybe they're misgendered or maybe there's discriminatory language that's used. So would want to, also pair that visual cue with the conversation with staff, and we can help, when it comes, I think the online training, the Building a More Inclusive Workplace, really helps to create a baseline for that. So it might be, we're putting these signs up, plus we're all taking this 30-minute online training so that we, have the foundations for providing services in an affirming way.
Thank you, Daniel. That's great. I would just add that Vice Chair Morris and Commissioner Valadez are on our subcommittee for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And our commission has taken up issues under that umbrella before. And that is part of why you're here tonight. And we have the good fortune to have your presentation. But as we contemplate how we can be a more just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive community, this subcommittee would be likely to interface with you and could certainly explore more of these suggestions, but they would have to come back to us as action items for us to contemplate. So I want to curtail the discussion tonight just at that boundary. And now I will turn it over to public comment if there is any. Casey, is there?
I have not received any requests for public comment, and I am looking now to see if although I do have people watching, I do not have any hands raised.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the presentation answered the questions, so that's great. Thank you again, Daniel. I really appreciate you.
Thanks so much to you all. I really appreciate the invitation and looking forward to continuing the conversation. Take care and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
So at this point, we're going to open it up for public comment for items that are not on the agenda.
I do not have any requests to speak for items not on the agenda, and there are currently no hands raised.
Okay. So now we will go to our items for consideration and action. Agenda item number 3 is the approval of the minutes of the regular meetings on June 9th, 2021. If anybody has looked at those minutes and has, I see Vice Chair Morris has her hand up. Yes, Vice Chair Morris.
It's one itty bitty little correction, the date. It says June 0.
Oh.
On mine anyway.
Thank you.
Unless there's an.
It does.
Okay,
nope.
okay.
In the top right
Yes,
corner,
that was the
I
only
will
thing.
correct that.
Are there any other corrections that need to be made? Then I would ask for a motion to approve those minutes pending that minor correction that Vice Chair Morris noted.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Valadez. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Vice Chair Morris. All in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye or raising your hand. 1, 2, 3.
See unanimous.
Okay, thank you. That's good. I would note that since we are two commissioners shy tonight, for any motion to carry, we will need 4 affirmative votes. That one clearly carried, so good. Next, we have our Jedi subcommittee report.
Okay, I will be presenting that, and then I'll invite Teresa to add anything she'd like. Give me a second here to launch the presentation. And I'll ask for your confirmation that I am successful in that. Share screen. Can you see it?
It'll take just a second. We don't see it yet. Commissioner Valadez. Okay, we can see it now.
Okay, it's a blue slide.
It is, we can see the editing bar at the top, but if that doesn't bother you, I don't think it's gonna bother anyone else because it's blown up enough that we can see the entire screen.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like, I can reshare it, filling the screen with the presentation.
Janine, why don't you just try and click the presenter view icon right there where your pointer is and see if that solves the problem?
Okay.
There you go.
Can you still see?
Yeah. Great.
Yep.
All right.
Perfect now.
So let me make all your heads a little smaller so that I can actually see the whole presentation. That's the one problem with putting in presentation mode is the heads obliterate some of the text. All right. So hopefully I get some brownie points from Donna for incorporating the logos and the branding. First time I've done that, so prettied up the slide. Thank you for that, Donna.
You're welcome.
This is going to be the second subcommittee report from Jedi, although this one's a little bit more formal because we will be doing the following things. First, we want to present our scope and mission. We put some thought down to articulating a little, specifically what we saw as our scope and what we're going to try to achieve over time. And then secondly, we want to, in light of that, our mission, we would like to submit a proposal for our first project to Park. And we're calling it Small Steps to Increasing Inclusivity in Our Parks. And I'll explain what that means. And then the last will be what we are specifically asking of Park tonight. If you have any questions, please interrupt. You don't have to save your questions to the end. First, kind of setting a context for the Jedi subcommittee. What you see here, it'll probably be familiar to most of you. For me as a new commissioner, it was an important journey for me to understand the history of how this committee came to be. I won't take you through all of it, but there are some milestones here for the record that result in the formation of the committee. Specifically though, I'd like to note the fourth bullet, which is the ideals that were espoused in the collateral that are cited in the first three bullets. Those really are going to demonstrate the lens. They're going to be the lens through which we'll collaborate with staff to suggest and or assess all park relevant applications. So we're going to be kind of this little angel on the shoulder, always asking these questions. You know what? It looks like my battery got disconnected. Let me pause for a second. I need help with power. Hopefully I won't die here. The scope of the Jedi subcommittee, we want to cover all physical attributes of our parks and facilities, the programs that we administer, and then the policies and procedures that our Recreation and Community Services Department issues. Again, looking through the lens of all three attributes of the situation. So now articulating the mission, our mission, here's what we want to do. We'll strive to broaden equitable access in a variety of deployments, including but not limited to those three major bullets in the previous slide, but detail them. In terms of physical attributes, we want to go beyond ADA. This was the very first thing that Teresa told me about, her vision for the subcommittee, and I completely endorse it. So this covers the breadth of both play and activity structures and areas. It includes pathways, surfaces, seating, ingress and egress, how you get into and out of our park areas and facilities, shade and sun, sound and quiet. And finally, very importantly, visual, oral, and tactile enablers, some things that the able take for granted. We really need to become more sensitive to how these sensory enablers can make a huge difference to those that face challenges. Secondly, in terms of our programs and events, we want programs and events, we will strive to make them such that we reach out to underserved segments of our residents and visitor communities, increase cultural awareness and sensitivity so that we're basically educating. And we educate not only through literal education, talking and reaching out, but also through activity and participation. Sometimes education delivered through those means is much more effective and long lasting. And finally, in terms of procedures and policies, we want to broaden access to city assets and resources. Anecdotally, and in fact, there is no doubt that certain segments of our community have great confidence in accessing our assets, whether it's asking for permits, seeking rentals, showing up and participating. And we need to be more proactive about reaching out to these communities and then educate them and make sure that the methods by which we have registration, rentals, permits, the feedback mechanisms, the marketing that we issue, and the funding that we consider is creative and is inclusive. We just heard the presentation made by the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, and that was right in line with this. As far as 3.4 on funding and subsidy, you know, we're always balancing budgets, we're balancing cost recovery, a key priority for the City Council and for Donna and her organization. And so there's an opportunity in working with her organization to get clever about other forms of subsidy through collaboration, through public-private partnerships, sponsorships, and even flat-out grants. So this is going to, we took that scope and we elucidated it into the various segments that we want to make sure that we're applying Jedi principles throughout. Which leads us to our first proposal.
Commissioner Valdez, before we get to your first proposal, if you could go back to that slide that you were just on, I have a question or at least a request. It strikes me that one thing that's left out of your mission that could be assumed to be included under the third category, procedures, but I think you might consider taking specific note of it. One of the things that that our commission does is we do public outreach when we're going to do a major policy change or, for example, the implementation of the dog park. And we actually, the Parks and Recreation Department and our commission put forth quite substantial effort to reach the community and get feedback. But one of the things that we found was there were blind spots in our efforts to get that feedback, either because you know, some residents didn't typically communicate the way we chose to reach them, either through mail or through Facebook or the internet and so on. And so I would hope that we can make additional efforts to reach these underserved or challenged segments of our community, particularly when we have something like that dog park initiative where we need to engage the public. I would just ask that you contemplate that as an added named purpose.
So perhaps under 3.2, say outreach and feedback mechanisms.
Yeah, and just emphasize that we have to go really above and beyond when we do something like the community workshops that we did for the dog park and so forth.
Okay.
I keep going back to that example as you know, something that was really important. We put a lot of work into it, but we can do better.
Okay, thank you for that. So now on to our project. So I'll just go ahead and say what it is. We're proposing to collaborate with staff to identify which park locations can benefit from the installation of at least a single additional feature of inclusive activity or increased equitable access without requiring large changes to infrastructure or large scale refurbishment. Now, to step back a bit, we have some inclusivity feature projects in the work plan slated out in 2023 and 4, if I'm not mistaken. Donna will correct me if I'm wrong. And
That's correct.
That is correct. Thank you. That is a larger scale project and program. So we decided to look at this in kind of 2 ways. From the larger scope, yes, this is maybe just the beginning of that eventual large program, starting to lay some groundwork. But specifically, we'd like to break it down more actively and more surgically and say, it'd be really nice if over the next year or 2, and maybe within the next year, we can actually assess our parks, working with both Manny and Donna's organizations to see what specific inclusivity features, say a swing, or say a form of slide, or say a sound feature, or say a particular pathway that currently doesn't allow the use of something that already exists without requiring massive capital infrastructure change and massive funding. And so first, and point number 1, we want to embrace any existing plans that are already stated in this vein. And I refer to Director Hernandez's March 2021 overview of the parks plan. He made an assessment and took an overview. And then 2, we want to inventory the state of inclusivity/accessibility for each park in Los Altos. 3, review the options that are available in terms of products out there in the market. 4, identify solutions that bring the highest value at the lowest cost. Remember, we're trying to keep things lower cost in this initial project. And then finally, determine budget and feasible timeline. And note that this is currently outside of the approved CIP, as I already mentioned. But there's some money somewhere potentially, and we may be able to, under the guise of either maintenance or replacement or affordable upgrades, get it done before we spend the bigger money down the road under the guise of the CIP. So this is what we would like to pursue. We've reviewed this with Donna, with Director Legge, and we still have to review it with Director Hernandez. And but what we would like tonight, I mean, assuming nobody has questions right now, if you do, please ask them.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
For point number 2, when you say inventory the state of inclusivity and accessibility for each park in Los Altos, is there like a standard, or is there kind of inclusivity checklist that sort of exists that's sort of a statewide kind of standard, or are you guys developing kind of your own scorecard for each of these?
What we'll probably have to do is develop a scorecard, but we're not going to reinvent the wheel. So part of our process would be we'll go to the California Parks and Rec CPRS, and also to the National Parks and Rec. We'll also look at some other agencies to see what they've done, if they've created checklists. We'll do some outreach to other agencies to see if they've done such checklists. There's not one that currently exists in Los Altos. There are the ADA requirements. We're all ADA compliant, but as I said, we want to go beyond that. So that is an excellent question, and that's part of that inventory, because we wouldn't be able to assess without a checklist.
And if I may just add to that,
Yes.
there are companies that do assessments as well, and it's something we've discussed with Director Legge. So we are looking at how exactly how best to move forward on that. But it's also something that Commissioner Valdez and I spoke about, and that we plan to even walk through our parks and just see what we notice in each park, and if there's something that we think might be able to be changed, and then we can see if it actually complies or doesn't comply. But it would be working very closely with Director Legge and Manny Hernandez to get started on a good part of this, I would say.
Vice Chair Morris and Commissioner Valadez and Director Legge, do you have a sense of how much staff time is being requested for this effort?
If I may, through the chair.
Yes, please, Donna.
So in discussing this with Director Hernandez, I learned that all of our playground equipment is purchased from one manufacturer. So it doesn't make sense to talk to a manufacturer that is not the same as our playground. So I have made contact with that manufacturer. And so until I have a conversation with them, an initial conversation, and then an introduction to Commissioner Valadez and Vice Chair Morris, we won't have a sense yet of the staff time. But I expect that most of the time will be spent by the representative of the manufacturing company and the two commissioners. So I do not see a high impact to staff at this time.
Thank you.
And if I
Commissioner
may
Corrigan.
add, just to add to that, I can wait though.
No, it's fine. Vice Chair Morris, why don't you extend on that, and then we'll go to Commissioner Corrigan after you comment.
Okay, so we're really at the beginning, the exploratory level, and we're asking Donna to guide us through a good part of this. It started out where I reached out to another company and they would come and do an assessment and so on, but we've moved down that road finding out, no, we need to do it this way. So we're doing it the way that staff is recommending. I think the thing to understand is our goal is to make it as inexpensive to zero expense as possible, and certainly not burden staff with anything that we could do, because we're the subcommittee and we're generating this idea. And so anything we can do, we would do. And if it gets to a point where it does require staff time in any significant way, I believe that I would feel the proper procedure would to be bring it back to the commission at that point, and then I think it would probably have to go to the city council and get approval, because we're taking their time away from other projects that have already been slated as important. So I think I'm very mindful, and I'm sure that Commissioner Valadez is very mindful of the fact that we don't want to be stepping on their toes or asking them to do a bunch of work that maybe we can do or has to wait.
Thank you. Commissioner Corrigan?
Yeah, thank you. One question I had, I think I assume this goes without saying that like it doesn't say explicitly that the subcommittee brings recommendations forward to the commission in this vein. So I'm curious what the are there various decision points? And I'll give an example. One key element here is prioritizing underserved segments. So it'd be useful to know what the overall plan is on the target segments. Because, for instance, the operational plan from the Parks and Recreation Department is to focus on kind of an age demographic. So, but this could go off in a different vein. I don't know where you're headed. I know we talked about the ADA enhancements that you mentioned. So so bringing that back, I'm just trying to figure out about oversight of the commission versus what the subcommittee is doing.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Corrigan, any ask that this subcommittee has, as well as any other subcommittee, would first come to the broader commission. And so I think they're actually asking us tonight, we're trying to refine what they're asking, but I think this subcommittee is asking for us to support the next step in this process. Is that a fair characterization of what you guys
As
are
I get to
asking
the
for
last
tonight?
slide, I'll be explicit
Yeah.
in we're asking.
Okay, all right. Well, then we've derailed you slightly, and I apologize for that. Why don't you go ahead and move through your other slides then?
It's okay. Thank you. This is it. What we're requesting from Park. First, to receive our status report. So you've now received it. To approve our scope and mission, we want your endorsement of both of those items. And finally, we want your endorsement of our proposed small steps project in principle. We don't have enough meat behind it yet to quantify, calories and dollars and timelines, but we want to take that next step, just as Commissioner Daly said. And so we want your approval or your endorsement, not approval, your endorsement of it in principle to allow us to progress. And then we would make our next update in September. I'm assuming we're taking August off from a meeting, but we will work over the next 2 months and present in September our first, what we'd call substantive project outline and any updates or information that we've gathered so that we can properly, scope out the project and put more detail around it. But we didn't want to take step one without getting your endorsement. And that's it.
So I think that this slide actually is the basis of a good motion. I will leave it to the subcommittee members of the subcommittee to motion and to second based on this slide. I would suggest, and we'll have discussion before we get to a motion, but I would suggest, and we'll have discussion after a motion is made too, if need be. I would suggest that first bullet point, if you make it a motion, change the word receive to approve. We're approving a report and approving scope and mission and change the word endorse to approve further investigation of, quote, small steps project in principle. And that would make it a motion that is in good order.
Okay.
So do we have questions for the subcommittee about the report and what we're being asked? Commissioner Corrigan.
Yes, the other question I had is because I honestly always find this nebulous to me. Can you describe what equitable means versus equal and how
Absolutely.
that applied?
I love answering that question, Commissioner Corrigan. Thank you. Equal is pretty straightforward. You give, you have 3 sandwiches, you have 3 kids, they're all the same sandwich, and all 3 kids get that same sandwich, okay? Everybody has gotten equal treatment. But if you take a step back and think about the 3 kids, one of the kids is already brought to school their lunch, and they're pretty well off in life, so they have lunch plus 3 snacks for the daytime. And then another kid, the second kid, may have brought a simple lunch, maybe half a sandwich and no snacks for the day. And the third kid showed up with no sandwich at all and probably hasn't even had breakfast. So the equitable thing to do, instead of handing each kid that sandwich, one of the 3 sandwiches that you had, is to not give a sandwich to the first kid, give a half a sandwich to the second kid, and give 1.5 sandwiches to the third kid, because that's probably what they need from a nourishment standpoint. And it's a more equitable way of distributing the resources have to benefit, to see that all 3 kids are getting reasonably equitable level of, in this case, nourishment. But you can apply that same metaphor to access to swings or to the ability to enter the park. Another analogy that I've heard, that I've seen done in graphical form, is you have a fence, and it's an opaque fence, and one person is tall and perfectly able, and another person is not as tall and is challenged with a crutch and therefore can't get up on their tippy toes. And then a third kid is in a wheelchair. And so equal access is if you want to be equal, you basically can put a platen underneath each person so that their heads are all at the same level, so they can all look over the fence. But in reality, that's a little inequitable because it's kind of hard for a kid on a wheelchair to get up on a platen. So what you can do is you can replace the fence with a chain link fence, and now everybody can see. So that's a better and more equitable solution. Fundamentally, what equitable means is that you may dole out resources or capabilities or other benefits, if you will, in what seems like and what is an unequal fashion, in order to kind of level the playing field for all of the participants based on what they bring to the table, whether it's a physical challenge, a mental challenge, or a lack of resource in their personal life, so that they need help in order to be able to participate on an equitable basis. Does that help at all?
It does. In fact, I appreciate that, because that's my sort of understanding of this. And it's also it's always been my concern about equal, looking through the chain link fence where they all can look through that fence equally versus, basically making an allocation, a decision to choose one segment of the community over another for whatever reason, which I do have a concern with that principle. I believe in the equal access, but that's my particular, obviously my particular position on this.
So in your case, you would believe that all 3 kids should each get a sandwich?
I'm just saying the example in general, you're going to be choosing groups that get benefits that other groups don't get the same benefit, regardless of the starting point of the individual. And that's fine. I mean, I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're stating, that we're favoring certain groups over others.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't necessarily see it as equity as a favoring, because you're actually trying to level the playing field. So if you think about people standing in ditches, some people stand way up here, some people stand, lower, and then other people are really low, and you're trying to get them all to the same level. So yeah, in fact, things may be unequal. It may look like you're favoring one group over the other, but you're not really favoring them at the expense of those that have. You're simply trying to bring them up to the level of those that have. Favoring would be, giving the kid that didn't have any food at all, 10 dinners for the rest of the week, and taking the dinners away from the rich kid to feed the little kid. That wouldn't probably not. You don't want to create a starving kid to feed another kid. That's not being equitable.
All right. So this is an interesting discussion, but I think I want to move us along a little bit. Vice Chair Morris, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so for me, when I first joined the commission and I brought this up as wanting to add a feature into a park that would make the park more available for everybody to enjoy, all levels to be able to enjoy. What I was thinking of is that we have parks that are beautiful and people can go to enjoy them, but we have people who can't actually get into the park, or who can't use the structures that are there without a great deal of effort. And so, or can't use them at all because we don't have a piece of equipment that they can use. And that, for me, feels very unfortunate. So it meets ADA. All of our playgrounds meet ADA. When I look at them, I think there are children who I know, who I see in the world, who can't access our playgrounds. And so on that very basic level, that's what I would call being equitable, is making sure that that they can access the playground, at least some part of the playground, and that there's something for everybody when they go to our playgrounds, and that children have the ability to join in the fun. And to me, that's the difference of equal. They have equal access, but they don't actually have the ability to get in there and do it on their own or with limited amount of help. And it feels unfair to me. That's the part that I think I want to make things more fair. And that's where equity comes in, is there's a fairness level of that. And just briefly, if people think about with, it's that idea of you tell people, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, if nobody has bootstraps, if they don't have the bootstraps, they can't pull themselves back, up by their bootstraps. So that's what I think of as equity. You have to have bootstraps in order to be able to pull up. But as the parks go, and my intent with my reasoning for wanting to add a feature to a park is, I want the kids that go to that park that maybe have a sibling that's more able-bodied, but they aren't, to be able to join in and have some fun at our parks as well. And we lack that in our parks right now.
Okay, hang on, please, Commissioner Corrigan. Again, I find this discussion to be important, but I do want to move us along. So I would ask that I would like to entertain a motion at this time, and we can then discuss the motion rather than the more general discussion of equity versus equality and some of the other, as I said, important things that we're discussing, but just in the interest of time and to move forward. So Vice Chair Morris and Commissioner Valadez, would one of you like to make a motion?
If I could, through the chair.
Yes, please, Commissioner Leg or Director Legge.
To make sure there's nobody from the public that wants to speak before you do a motion.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, just real quickly before we go to questions from the public, are there any more questions for clarification that have not been brought up? And Commissioner Corrigan, you did have your hand up. Certainly want to go to you if there's something else, but if it's, just be mindful of the clock. That's all.
Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought, to be honest. I'll have to come back to you.
Well, I'm sorry. I'll take the blame for that, and certainly if you have you'll have another opportunity. So, okay, then let's see if there are any questions or comments from the public.
I do have 3 members of the public, but at this point, I do not see any hands raised. I'm kind of stalling because a couple of them are new to this item or joined at or just before this item, but no, I don't see any hands raised from the public.
Okay, we'll give it just another moment to make sure that they have an opportunity to be heard if they want to. And
I still do not see anything,
okay.
Chair Daly.
All right, so yes, I would like to entertain a motion, preferably from one of the members of the subcommittee, but it doesn't have to be. If somebody else wanted to do it, that'd be fine too.
I can, if you want me to, unless you have it, Commissioner Valadez.
I don't care. Go ahead.
Oh, it's fine if you're ready. But I did want to ask one thing, Chair Daly. So I just want to make sure we're doing something correctly. So this is funny, I'm clarifying what we're doing, but my understanding when you're on a subcommittee is you come up with your plan, you make your plan, and then basically we just go ahead and work on our plan. And when we have things that we need to share with the commission, we share them with the commission. So asking for the commission to accept, approve, endorse, whatever it is that even something we have to do in order to be able to move forward as a subcommittee? Or can we just move forward with it or because it's agendized now we have to go through this process? Is there some technical parts of this?
We are never compelled to make a motion. We are never
Okay.
compelled to take action.
Okay.
I personally think you're at enough of a milestone, a progress point where it would serve all the stakeholders well to memorialize this threshold and get support for moving forward. Because
Okay,
there will
great.
be, some amount of staff time involved, and the next step will be to, essentially come with a dollar figure and a specific item.
Okay.
And you're also asking us to, as a commission, to in a sense, push the boundaries a little bit, because we have a plan and a CIP budget and so forth. So I do think if we want to go forward, it would be wise to have the support of the commission memorialized on the record.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Valadez?
Thank you for saying that very last clause, Commissioner Daly, Chair Daly, because I think because precisely of that point, we should be specific in this motion. I think we should proceed with the motion.
Okay.
Great. Teresa, Vice Chair Morris, do you want to make the motion or do you want me to make the motion?
I can go either way. I like the word accept as opposed to approve and endorse, but I will leave it to you. Let's hear what you have.
I was going to say, I hereby move that Park approve our status report, or accept our status report from the Jedi Subcommittee, approve the proposed Jedi Subcommittee scope and mission, and approve further investigation of the Small Steps project and report back to Park in September.
I would offer a friendly amendment, perhaps that we approve the proposed Jedi Subcommittee scope and mission with the added emphasis on outreach when the commission does something substantial, like launch a dog park initiative. Just call it initiative outreach or something like that.
I accept that friendly amendment.
Okay. We can wordsmith it in a second. I mean, Teresa, you, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I have a question. Do we actually need that? Because as a commission, as an entire commission, we need to do that. And you said it earlier, Chair Daly, that we can do better. And I think overall as a commission, we must do better. We did a good job, but we need to be doing better as we move forward. But that won't be just on Jedi shoulders. That's going to be on every single commission shoulders. Because if we get to a point where we're doing outreach, it's going to involve the whole commission.
That's a good point. That's absolutely a great point, actually. But what I really meant was, I would hope that your subcommittee can provide added expertise in making sure that the same residents for whom you are trying to provide equitable amenities in our park, that we're doing the same things to help them. And a perfect example is somebody who's blind needs Braille signage in our parks. Well, somebody who's blind also probably needs a different form of outreach than a 3x5 mailer in their mailbox.
Yes, yes.
And your subcommittee is where the expertise should reside in making sure that outreach is just and equitable. But I do agree that it probably doesn't need to be. I mean, I'm certainly willing to approve your scope and mission, to vote, to cast my vote to approve your scope and mission as stated.
And Chair Daly, if I can jump back to that mission under section 2, programs and events, we do, I mean, it's all about outreach and education.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, I mean, it's kind of implicit anyways. And any outreach, correct me if I'm wrong, any outreach that we would do would have to be approved by Park, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's done by staff. So at any rate, I would withdraw that friendly amendment at this point. I think it's discursive.
All right.
But if I may, I'd like to add to that, though, because what I'm hearing Chair Daly say is that because we're Jedi, because we will be reaching out perhaps to a different segments of our city and our residents than we normally do, we may have to be more creative and more customized in how we reach out to people than maybe the overall commission might consider being. And so I hear that loud and clear, and then I suggest that we also as a commission need to be doing that anyway. So, so I appreciate that you withdrew the friendly amendment,
Sure.
but let's all think of that as we move forward.
Commissioner Wang?
I would also sort of add, though, that, to what Chair Daly said, to help the rest of the commissions in their outreach to make sure that we are being inclusive, right? And so for you guys to help us, the rest, everyone, right, in any form of outreach, just to make sure that, we're doing so in a way that's fully inclusive, right? So to be kind of the SME, if you will, right, for outreach and other things that, to be a consultative body or resource, right, for the rest of our work.
Yes.
Thank you. To watchdog us.
Right. So again, may I speak on
Yes,
this?
please.
Okay. So does that sound like we need to add that to our mission?
I
Is
don't-
that
I don't-
something we need to massage?
I don't think so, because it's implicit. The scope and mission reference the founding documents and even our own city's resolution, and all of those principles are embedded there.
Great.
As I said, I withdraw the
Okay.
friendly amendment because I think it's discursive. I am ready to support the motion as it is offered. But we don't have a second yet. Vice Chair Morris, were you going to second it?
Yes, I'm happy to second it. And I'm wondering if we need to repeat it so that everybody knows what it is.
Yes. Casey, would you please read back what you have?
We can. Yes, and Commissioner Valadez, you can actually take this piece down if it's easier to see people's faces while they are discussing and voting, because I wrote it down before you even started the motion. So, Commissioner Valadez moved that Park accept the status report from the Jedi Subcommittee, approve the proposed Jedi Subcommittee scope and mission, and approve further exploration of the small steps, in quotes, project in principle.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, let's call the question. Does anybody have any further questions before we take a vote? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have 4 affirmative and any opposed? Okay. So that motion carries by a vote of 4-1. All right. So the next item on our agenda tonight is the operating budget and capital improvement plan. I see that it's 8:38 by my clock. I think we've covered a good portion of our agenda. I think it's a good time for a 5-minute break. Is that okay with you, Director Legge and Casey?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I'll just have to adjust one. I had it set for 10 minutes, so give me just a moment.
Well, I'm open to doing it for 10, but I don't feel we need 10. Does anybody feel they need 10? All right, let's just take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene. Let's say we reconvene at 8:45, okay? That'll give us 5 plus. Sophia, I would like you to get something to eat, okay, please?
Hello.
Okay, let's go ahead and reconvene, and we are at agenda item number 5, the operating budget and capital improvement plan. Director Legge.
Thank you, Chair Daly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hello. Okay. So City Council adopted the operating budget and the 5-year capital improvement plan on June 22nd. And at their meeting of July 13th, last night, the City Council adopted their goals and objectives for the next 2 years. And so as presented in the staff report, the proposed goals and objectives were adopted as presented last night, so there were no changes. And so hopefully you had a chance to review the information. There is a lot of information specific to the Recreation and Community Services Department. And I also included information related to Municipal Services Center under Manny Hernandez, because you're both Parks and Recreation Commission. I think the most significant thing related to the CIPs recommended by the commission is that I'm going to stop share, is the discussion over the kitchen at Grant Park. So the City Council accepted staff's recommendation that during the first year, Manny Hernandez and myself will team up to do a facilities assessment update. There was an assessment done in 2017, and basically Manny will take the lead and update that assessment, and hopefully in the second year will be implementation as a result of things that are identified related to our buildings, whether it's sustainability items, electricity, water, all these types of things. I know that in the past we've also mentioned charging stations for vehicles. And so we're hoping that that will happen in the first year and implementation the second year. As far as the other 3 items recommended by this commission, just as a reminder, it included the pickleball / basketball court, the designation of picnic areas, and oh my gosh, I just forgot the third one. Anyway, the item this evening earlier from the Jedi subcommittee was discussing the inclusive equipment features. And so as mentioned, that was in the other year, the 3rd year of the 5-year plan. So when we come back to the commission at some point, we'll go to City Council and ask if they would also include that portion within these next 2 years. So if there's any questions specifically to the budget, I was very proud to be reminded of all the accomplishments that we were able to partake and lead during the COVID process, including preparing for the opening of the community center. And I think that we have some very good, realistic goals for the next 2 years. And again, it was the Financial Commission and City Council's recommendation that we go in status quo. We basically started at the same level that we were during COVID. During the last year, we made significant amount of reductions. Just to give you an example, we went from producing our recreation activity guide 3-4 times a year to sending out mailers in the form of a postcard. And so these are some things that we will be looking at when we go back to council mid-year, and we may be making requests because it may be difficult for us to promote the programs and services we provide, not only in the community center, but all of our facilities if we don't have a way to market it. So we're strategically looking at the next 2 years, including the opening of the community center, and being very, very careful and intentional with our plans. Any questions related to the budget information provided?
Yes. Donna, just want to clarify or just emphasize that we're going to, the facilities condition assessment or facilities assessment of Grant Park is going to happen this year, and implementation of what comes out of that facilities assessment would be in the following year. That's, just want to emphasize that's correct, right?
Yeah, that's the
Good.
intention.
Good. Now I would like to ask if our Grant Park subcommittee can please do a walkthrough of the facility with Manny and with you, and just get a general sense of the kinds of things that are being looked at. And we should probably also review the 2017 facilities assessment before we do that walkthrough, so that that can be our baseline. And then we can begin to have some dialogue about the facilities assessment this year, and perhaps influence it.
So based on your previous request, I did speak to Manny, and he said that's not a problem, but it'll probably be about 3 months. We really need to focus on the community center right now.
Understood.
So I would say in the new year will be when we can accommodate the subcommittee to do a tour and discussion.
Okay, that's great. Vice Chair Morris, as the other member of that subcommittee, is there anything else that you would like to ask or add to this discussion?
Nope, I'm super excited, but
Yeah.
that's it. I'm really thrilled with the progress and the results, and thank you for that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing the walkthrough as well and getting moving on that. But this is progress.
All right, I just remembered the other project.
Yeah.
The Naturescape. So those are the 3 projects we will be working on in the next year.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Director Legge on the budget and capital improvement plan?
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't expect to have any comments or questions from the public at this time, because this is actually something that's just being reported out of council. But if there are, I would entertain them right now. Casey, is there anybody with their hand up?
There are still 2 members and neither has their hand up.
Okay. Now, item number 6 on the agenda. Are there any information items or announcements from city staff? You're muted, Donna.
Thank you. Most of the information is standard. I just wanted to make an announcement that we are still recruiting for our admin assistant position and our adults program position. And then there will be a 3rd position that we will be recruiting for in the event you know anyone who specializes in marketing. Our newest employee, Ian Getz, has accepted a full-time position, and so he will be leaving us. It's good for him, bad for us. So we will be recruiting for his position, which is a very critical position at this time. So, and again,
right. And the announcement came down today about the specific opening day of the community center, right?
Yes. Right before the meeting, I sent a copy of our press release announcing our grand opening scheduled for October 2nd at 2 p.m. at 97 Hillview Avenue.
That's wonderful. Vice Chair Morris.
It's just a quick question. Do these jobs get posted on Nextdoor?
That's a good question.
I actually can answer that, Donna, if you don't mind. I was just on a meeting where we were discussing that. Previously, what we have done is that we've posted them on CalOps, which is the state of California, all the counties in California. It's government agency jobs. We've also posted them on our Los Altos website. So if someone goes directly to the Los Altos HR department, they can see all jobs available in Los Altos. Given what we currently have been encountering with success in hiring, we are reaching out to HR about also posting on Nextdoor, LinkedIn, Indeed. There were a whole list of things, and those are being run through our HR department at this time. And so we should know as we start to post these positions
Okay,
again.
great. And I would say Foothill College and the other local colleges have their job boards, and the students really do use them.
That's actually what I neglected to mention. We do use the
great.
local
Okay,
college
good.
job boards as well.
Hey, Casey, when we get the okay on LinkedIn, I mean, I'm sure that, I would be willing to put it on my LinkedIn, and, I'm sure others would be willing to put it on their LinkedIn too, to say, hey, come join the Parks and Recs team.
Yep, I think we can send something out. Jamie will likely be doing those postings, and so when we get those ready, I can disperse them to the commission.
I'd be happy to help spread the word.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to go to commissioners' reports and comments, basically subcommittee updates. And again, it's understood that not every subcommittee is going to have something substantive to report. So what we're looking for is, did you meet? What did you talk about? What's a very quick status update? And it doesn't have to be a long report. It can be quite quick, or it could be something as simple as nothing new to report. So first, Skatepark Feasibility Subcommittee. Commissioner Ye is not here, so naturally that means Commissioner Corrigan, you're flying solo.
Thank you, Chair Daly. Yeah, we didn't meet, and I think our goal is going to be now that I think Director Lakin can confirm, but I think we're kicking off the skate classes as we speak today. So hopefully we'll start. Commissioner Ye and I will go over there and start getting some feedback. And we had mentioned that previously this is more of a longer term project, but that's the status.
Great. Any questions for the skate park feasibility subcommittee? Okay. Off-leash pilot program subcommittee.
Commissioner Corrigan, do you want me to just do the brief rundown? Okay, it's really brief. It's moving along. There's nothing really to report. I think we have a tentative future agenda item in September, but it's not likely that we will be ready to give much of any information until the pilot program is closed down and staff has a chance to do what they need to do with the surveys and all of the information they have, and we get together and we meet and we go over everything. So I just wanted to kind of put that reality piece out there, but it's all moving along per how it's been the whole time.
So when we get to potential future agenda items, we may push that one back based on what we're hearing. So that's fine. Any questions for Dog Park Subcommittee? Commissioner Valadez.
Thank you. In the feedback that you have received to date, vis-a-vis the surveys and other forms, has there been any commentary about the presence of bicycles at the off-leash park and its impact on dogs? Dogs, I mean, they're pretty, unless they're extremely well trained, a lot of times bikes can be very disruptive to dogs. And I know that because I've attended the park, it's quite a, that path along from Edith to to the parking lot is very popular, not only for walkers, but surprisingly to me for bicyclists. And they come tearing through at extraordinarily high speeds. You know, dogs are running around and they cross over into that cement or asphalt path. They don't know that there's a fence there. And I've seen a lot of disruption with dogs getting triggered by high flying bikes. And then the people getting startled or getting angry. So I'm wondering if you've received, am I the only one that's ever seen this, or am I the only one that's ever fed back this information to you, or what do you see about that?
Well, yeah, Commissioner Valdez, I will say in all my conversations with people at the off-leash site, I haven't heard that come up, to be honest, from anyone. Although I will be, now that you mentioned that, I will be asking. I did, and I just encountered one experience to what you said, where I saw, it was more like the cyclist was coming through and the dogs came over and the cyclist stopped, and they kind of, I just noticed where the cyclist was hesitant until there was one or two dogs came over and they would clear. So it was more like the concern was on the bicyclist side. It was only one incident, and it wasn't an incident. It's just that the concern was more on the cyclist side rather than the dog side. So that was my only exposure.
And I haven't heard anything regarding bicyclists. And I will add, just as a gentle reminder for anybody who might be listening to the meeting, that dogs are supposed to be at voice command. And if they aren't able to be in control at all times, they're not supposed to be in the off-leash section. But I think Commissioner Corrigan, I think we both were there at the same time, interestingly, when that bike thing happened, and the people that had the dogs were blocking the sidewalk with their dogs while they chatted, and the bicyclist just sat there and waited for them to move. I have seen bicyclists go through with no issues at all. So so clearly, I mean, it would be helpful if you told us when you go, and then maybe I can go during that time, or Commissioner Corrigan, and we can see if there's a difference. And now that school's out, maybe it's increased a bit too as kids use it. But, and Donna, Director Legge may know more from the surveys if they're tracking that.
Yeah, we haven't looked at the surveys since our initial read on them in April, May. So.
Okay. Any more questions for the dog park subcommittee?
And I'll add thank you for saying that to us, because now it's a question we can ask specifically, because I'm and I speak to everybody. So I will ask that question now. How's it going? Have you noticed anything with bikes?
Okay. The open space subcommittee has nothing to report. Jedi subcommittee had an agendized report. So you guys are free to add something here and now if you need to, but it's fine if you don't. Okay. The Outdoor Adult Fitness Equipment Subcommittee, Commissioner Wang and I have done some communication. So Commissioner Wang, did you want to give a thumbnail sketch of what's going on?
Sure. So after the last meeting, we had reported that there had been a great deal of research that had already been done, and the topic of an outdoor sort of fitness area had been discussed a few years ago. We were hoping that we could get our hands on the research that had been done a couple of years ago, but it turns out that I don't know that research is available. So we might have to just start from scratch, which is okay. Chair Daly and I, discussed sort of a way forward, and just to start from the beginning. Donna, I think we want to reach out to you and just chat, to understand, just pick your brain a little bit, and then just understand, like, first and foremost, what are even the parks that we should be looking at? What's the best process to do the research and engage? There are a few companies out there that do these, outdoor fitness kind of areas of different sorts, and just, what's the best way to reach out to those those companies, what's the best way to do an assessment. I do feel like we need to have something outlined before we can sort of take it back to this this commission and then out for public comment. So we just want to get to that point where we have enough. So we just want to pick your brain, I think, Donna, about the best way to move forward and what the appropriate process is, if that's okay.
Yes, if I could through the chair. So even though the report is not locatable, we know what the results were. So I can share that with you. So, and the brainchild of the work is Councilmember Weinberg. So I'm sure we can set up a meeting with him as well. No, he doesn't have that information, but I have the information. So,
Councilmember Weinberg did the report on a computer that he no longer owns, and it went bye-bye.
We know the results. We don't have to have the report for me to tell you what the results were.
Yep.
Is my point.
Okay.
So, so we'll set up a meeting and we'll get started.
Thank you.
Great.
So then,
Great.
I think following kind of that, meeting with Donna and her team, then Chair Daly and I can, sort of establish a more regular cadence of meetings, as appropriate.
Excellent. Any questions for the Fitness Equipment Subcommittee? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to School District Collaboration Subcommittee. Unless Commissioner Corrigan has something he wants to say, I'm going to basically say nothing new to report now, which is consistent with what council asked us to do, which was kind of, hold off for a little while.
Agreed.
Okay, sounds good. Sustainability and Energy Independence Subcommittee. Nothing new to report. We Commissioner Ye and I have had some conversations ad hoc, and we continue to interface with the working group on climate change and adaptation, which actually has a meeting tomorrow. So, potentially pending that meeting, we might have something more to report, but nothing at this time. So any questions for the Sustainability and Energy Independence Subcommittee? Yes, Commissioner Valadez.
It's more informational. Does your committee have any role or working in any way with the community center opening in terms of, how the community center is operating and the plantings and all that? Were you involved in any way with that, or does that charter cross over in any way or not?
We did not interface with, we did not have a role. I suppose we might have made some sort of proactive contribution to that, but we didn't.
Okay, thank you.
Grant Park Subcommittee, we've kind of had an ad hoc report as it pertains to the CIP plan and council objectives and so forth. We did try and establish some meeting protocols, right, Commissioner or Vice Chair Morris? And so our goal is to meet the first week of each month. Is that, do I remember correctly?
First Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m.
Right, and I think
We're scheduled out for the year.
And I think we didn't last week, perhaps because of the holiday.
I think that was it.
Maybe the chair forgot to coordinate or something.
Nope, it wasn't on my calendar. I think it was because of the holiday.
Yeah, I think we agreed that with
We would skip it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Do you want me to give the rest of the details?
Please.
Okay, because
please.
I typed it out, man.
Oh,
It's here.
awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank
So
you
we're
so
going to
much.
meet every Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month, not every Wednesday, first Wednesday of every month. We'll supplement with emails, phone calls, email, phone, or in-person meetings as needed. We'll continue to gather public feedback and work toward master plan next fiscal year, which we just covered with Donna. Work with Manny, work with Donna, identify opportunities for other incremental improvements such as benches. So depending on what we can accomplish, if we can't accomplish bigger things, do some smaller things. And then we were recommending that we might be able to anticipate a report and request for vote on RECs in October or November timeframe. However, given the community center and the city council information that we just got, that's probably going to shift.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Okay, yeah.
Any questions for Grant Park Subcommittee? Okay. Program Resources Subcommittee, Commissioners Wang and Valadez.
Right. So on programming, we met with Donna and Bridget to, just get a baseline understanding of the planning process, for classes and programming, how topics are determined, how instructors are identified and contracted, and the types of instructors. We talked about, some of the gaps, that we knew were in programming and where we might want to focus. We offered a couple of ideas for class types. And then we talked about how we might be the most useful to Donna and her team. So we got an assignment, which is great. Donna and Bridget asked us to do sort of an assessment of the programming offered in some of the neighboring cities, right? So some of the cities that have program catalogs, to help them go through those catalogs, pick out either classes that, seemed really interesting or what stood out, or, just do an overall assessment, as a resource for Donna and team. So Jeannie and I are, we sort of listed out like 20 cities, neighboring cities, and we're just going to tackle them and hope to get something to you, Donna and team, in the next couple of weeks. What at that point when we met, the new specialists, hadn't come on board yet. Now that they're on board, I think that we'll probably get engaged, with them, as kind of they get settled into their roles. And, we are looking to maybe put more definition to our scope and our mission for the next meeting after we've had maybe another opportunity to talk to Donna and team.
That sounds great. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. Does anybody have any questions for the Program Resources Subcommittee? Vice Chair Morris.
I don't know if it's so much of a question. Well, yeah, let me put it as a question. So when you're looking at those catalogs, or when Bridget gave you that assignment, was there any discussion about similarly sized populations or similarly, made up cities in a way, when you're looking at them to see how realistic they might be? Or was it just go out, look at them and go crazy and come back with like the coolest or most interesting things you found?
Yeah, I mean, I think my interpretation is that, just look through the catalogs, and if there's anything that jumped out, something that we thought might be interesting, for Los Altos to consider, whether it's a class topic or an instructor or, something of that sort, just to pull out, because, it's sort of like a more structured way of providing sort of suggestions as opposed to throwing out, just one off. So I think we're going to start there. And, admittedly, we haven't started looking through, catalogs yet. So there might be other, interesting tidbits that, come up. But I think the focus, we're looking for more so like the adult programming, what are those, some of those classes and offerings that appeal to a target that is right now more underserved in terms of the program offerings. Is that accurate, Commissioner Valadez and Donna?
I mean, we haven't really outlined the specific scope of what we're going to be looking through as Cindy, as Commissioner Wang mentioned. We'll go through, we've already listed the cities. We haven't included San Francisco and San Jose. We're looking at the mid-tier cities and the small cities. I think that's a good exercise, even if they have either demographic constitutions quite different than ours, populations, reasonably larger than ours and some smaller than ours. That gives you a wider spectrum within which to assess what opportunities and suitabilities might exist for our city, especially as our city is expected to change over the next few years, and it will change. Is that as Commissioner Wang mentioned, when talking with Director Legge and her group, it's very clear that we have this gap in the adult. I think we identified 18 to 50-year-old type demographic in terms of lots of programs. And so it wasn't an explicit ask from Director Legge, look only in those age ranges, but I know that it is a priority for our subcommittee because we sense, that is whether it's a shortcoming or a thinning of programs within our brochure. So along those lines, we're very interested to see what other communities are doing. I'd also like to add, and we did not discuss this in our meeting with Director Legge, that there may be programmatically some overlap here with the Jedi subcommittee in terms of inclusivity and inclusiveness, in terms of some of the programs, some of the things that maybe we didn't think about, cultural types of outreach and programs that might be suitable across all ages. And so that may be something that Vice Chair Morris and I from the Jedi subcommittee might collaborate in this regard. And again, I'm just throwing that out here for the first time, but it seems to there seems to be some synergy in that regard.
So interesting point, Commissioner Valadez. I want to remind the commissioners of the Brown Act and the serial meeting definitions. Fortunately, both of these subcommittees are comprised of two people, one serving on both of them. So combined, we're talking about three people, which isn't a quorum. But if we were in a situation where the subcommittees combined would comprise four or more, we would have to be very mindful of inadvertently having a serial meeting. Okay, so
right, no such meetings have happened.
Yeah, just a reminder. I think the best way to deal with that when we have subcommittees that want to interface with one another is to work through Director Legge and let her facilitate that, just to make sure that we're mindful of the Brown Act considerations. Director Legge, is that a fair thing?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. But I do think you're right that there's some interesting synergy there. So Commissioner Corrigan.
It is just a quick observation, and maybe the risk of stating the obvious, but I know, like Commissioner Valadez, you have an interest in cost recovery, and so one of the things I'm curious about is there a way to gather, class size when you're going through the catalogs? I don't know from Director Legge's point of view if that's typically an indicator of demand, or is it like hopeful demand? But I thought it'd be interesting to get that metric on class size if that's readily available in the catalogs, for instance, so.
Director Legge.
So if I could, just for clarification, what's most important is if there is something that's appealing and that we think that would go well in Los Altos, we will contact the instructor and match the instructor for the site. The site will depict how many people could fit in the class, right? So it's flexible and customizable based on the facility that is available. So between not only the new community center, we're also looking for classes that will be taught at Shout Park, Grant Park, Lacey, at all of our facilities. So the size of the community really doesn't matter. It's really a one-on-one conversation with the instructor in terms of, what size room do you need? What are you, how do we accommodate them based on the facilities that we have available? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just trying to find a demand assessment, and how do you, like, is there an indicator in that process through the class size that's offered? Because they probably, but
What might
yeah,
what
I
might be
defer to you.
popular in Mountain View might not be popular in Los Altos and vice versa. And so the way we track our classes is purely by attendance, right? So we give it a chance a couple of times, and if the numbers aren't growing, then we drop the class and we add another one. So it's sort of trial by error. Let's say we found a class in Cupertino that we thought that would work, we would contact our colleagues in Cupertino and say, you know, can we get the contact information of the instructor? How's that class going, right? So we would get that information directly from the agency.
Thanks.
Okay, so moving on, we actually have this subpoint B, individual commissioner reports and comments. I would like to strike this from the agenda and from future agendas. I think it's redundant. We should all be making our comments and reports on at appropriately agendized intervals, and I don't want this to be a catch-all to lead to conversation that isn't properly noticed to the community. So if we could just make a note to strike that from future agendas, and then handle it as appropriate on each of the agenda items and subcommittee reports, and under the area of new business if a commissioner wants to propose a new agenda item for the future. All right, so, and that does lead us to potential future agenda items.
Oh,
And
sorry. Chair Daly.
Did somebody have a comment? Go ahead.
Sorry. I think there's one subcommittee missing
Okay.
the list. It's the one that Teresa and I are on. It's the performing arts in the park.
Oh, I'm sorry for that oversight.
I don't think it's on the list.
Yeah, I think we just kind of came to our senses about it too, where we were like, wait a minute, we haven't met, because it just slipped through our hands too. We did meet. We do have an update if you want it.
Okay, please, let's do that. And again,
Okay.
I
Add that to the
apologize for
list.
oversight and for skipping you guys. It
Yeah.
was
So
my fault.
performing arts in the park. So we just met. We had not given our report before. We're planning to meet monthly, regularly if monthly isn't needed. We will, for the future, we have sort of a future and a current thing. For future, we'll ask staff about upcoming meetings. We'd like to ask staff about upcoming meetings and establish an ongoing list of performers, which would be like in a Google Doc. Commissioner Wang made that suggestion, and it would be accessible to us and also live and accessible to staff. So we'd be giving them some ideas. They can take them, they can use them, not use them, whatever, they can add to them. Ideas of events that will focus on bringing more residents and people to our parks, explore planning a special event or Global Diversity Awareness Day in October. That was Director Legge mentioned that is happening as an event in October, and we all agreed not this October. There's enough going on. And we'll discuss that. We'll bring it to the Park Commission, talk about that, and then other ideas that we'll work on. Currently, we are planning to offer to help with the community center. So whatever Director Legge or the staff feels they need from us, we can help in any way. We're willing to do that. And the purpose of our our subcommittee is to broaden and diversify the options of performing arts offered in Los Altos in an effort to bring more residents out to the parks. We will do this by providing event ideas, providing resident voices, our own and others through outreach as needed, and by attending event planning meetings with staff as requested and as permitted. So the new mission for REC, we pulled some of our mission, our purpose from the goals that are stated in that mission. So that's what we have. That's what we're working on. And so our next step will be reaching out to Director Legge and setting up a meeting. And we've already discussed it a little bit. We just have to give her some details, and then we'll set up a meeting with the appropriate people and staff.
Delightful, delightful. So please tell me again what the subcommittee is called.
Performing arts in the park.
Okay. And Donna and Casey, can we just take a note and make sure that we include this on our future agendas? Does anybody have any questions for the Performing Arts in the Park subcommittee? Okay. So with that, we'll go to potential future agenda items. And the first one that we have teed up is off-leash pilot program recommendations. I am going to go out on a little bit of a limb, not really, because I know you guys already mentioned this, but I'm going to suggest September is probably not the right month to take this up. My recollection is that council gave us 90 days from the close of the pilot program to report back to council with our recommendations. When is the date that the pilot program closes?
September 30th, right?
Yeah, April 1st to September 1st.
Oh, September 1st.
Yeah, so April, July, August. Okay, October 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to get back to council before the end of this calendar year. And I would suggest that we really don't want to run this into the holidays too much if we can avoid it. So we can certainly push it back from our September meeting. And if we need to push it back again, we can. I'm going to suggest we tentatively pencil it in for the October meeting. Do you think that's possible, or would you prefer we just jump right to November with it?
I would say November.
Okay.
So I want to be mindful of the fact that staff is really busy and that our community center opens at the beginning of October. And so I think because we're going to need their support, their input, and their efforts, we better say November.
That's probably wise, but
We
note
can
of
try
caution,
faster.
note of caution, we won't have, it will be problematic to try and push it back further than that because of the way the holidays are coming and stuff. So let's tag November for this and try to make it happen. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
And Chair Daly,
Yes, please.
if there were an issue, with that, you know what, we'll talk to Director Legge and see the realities of our timing, and then maybe get back to the commission. We'll get back to the commission at our next meeting,
We have
because
some options.
it seems to,
We have
yes,
some
I mean, we could always go to the council and say, look, we don't want to present this during the holidays. That'd be a
ask for more
huge
time.
mistake. So
We could ask for more time. I am also open
exactly,
to,
if need be. We'll work very hard
I am
not to need that
also
time.
open to scheduling a special meeting specifically for this. You know, a meeting not on our regular
If need be,
calendar,
okay.
but one dedicated just to this issue, which in itself wouldn't necessarily be a
Good
bad
idea.
idea, because our
Right.
experience has told us that this particular issue is one where people, they want to be heard, and there's, so those
They're
are
passionate.
possibilities. Please we have some time to figure out what's going to work best, and I will largely defer to your judgment as a subcommittee for how you want to
Great.
handle it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Jedi subcommittee update and recommendations. We had a report from the Jedi subcommittee. When do you guys want to come back to us with what I assume will be your identified small step that you are going to ask for us to recommend funding for?
we originally were saying September.
Right.
At our September meeting that we'd be able to, the only thing, so maybe we keep you, I think Director Legge will be able to keep you up to date, Chair Daly, about whether it belongs on the agenda or not, because part of it is what she finds out.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Well, we have 2 months, so
Okay.
we don't have to know the September agenda today. We just have to know it 72 hours before we meet, or however long the public notice is required before we meet. Are there any other items that somebody would like to see on a future agenda? Vice Chair Morris.
One thing that came up this evening that I thought was interesting, and does, you brought it up, Chair Daly, is the idea of how our commissions can work together, as our, our subcommittees can work together and have input. And I wonder if having it as a future agenda item to discuss that at some point of, like, does anybody want to give input or work with, another subcommittee? So in other words, if there's, the adult playground one comes to mind, if they want to work with, the senior commission, or, I mean, I know that's outside of our subcommittee, or if the Jedi wants to work with, another subcommittee. I mean, could we do it in a more public way so that we would make sure we weren't violating the Brown Act in any
Sure.
way?
So my interpretation.
I mean, we
of
could
the
go through
Brown Act is
Donna,
that-
but
my interpretation of the Brown Act is that we wouldn't be in violation of the Brown Act if a subcommittee on our commission wanted to work with another commission or another commission's subcommittee, as long as it wasn't.
right. I was
part
wrong
of
on the commission part. I meant the
commission.
other subcommittees.
But we have had
Yeah.
joint meetings in the past, for example, with the Historical Commission on Halsey House. And so that's always an avenue. I think if there's something.
And that was a slip of the tongue. I meant within
Okay.
our group.
I'm open
within
to that.
our
I don't
commission.
know. Oh, you may have frozen, or maybe I did.
I want to have on the, for these to be able to talk about.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Morris, I missed what you said. My feed for you was temporarily frozen.
Yeah, and I wondered if it was me or it's been happening a bit tonight. Sorry, so it must be on my end. What I was saying is I made a mistake when I said the senior commission. I actually meant within our commission, the different subcommittees. If we feel like we want to work together a little bit on some things, maybe it should be an agenda item so that we can publicly discuss how we might work together and help each other with these and give input. And then that way, it's just all above board. We don't ever have to worry about making a mistake.
Yes, I think there's something to that. So if there is something that two subcommittees want to discuss, it should be an agenda item. It could be a discussion item. It doesn't have to be an action item. Or it could be an action item if there was, a presumption of action to be taken. And then again, I would remind everybody that just because we have an action item on the agenda, it doesn't mean we have to take action. So sometimes it's appropriate to agendize something as an action item so you have the latitude to go ahead and move on it, but there is no obligation to move on it. And it does invite public comment on the issue. So, but the other way to do it, as I suggested, is to work through Donna as the commission staff liaison. And so I think either are appropriate, and it's sort of a case-by-case thing. And we can look at it if something comes up and say, oh, geez, this is meaty. Let's put it on the agenda. Let's get public comment. Let's get a full-throated discussion of it. Or it may be something where we say, okay, not quite ready for the agenda. Let's do the working level interactions. So is that okay if if we kind of play it by ear? But I do think you're right that there's sometimes when things just need to be on the agenda. Yeah, Commissioner Valadez.
I wonder if there's a in between the two extremes that you just described. It occurs to me that if two subcommittees, or possibly three, might want to work together, but let's look at two, because now we're talking about 4 people possibly getting together. And they want to have a working meeting, a discussion towards some set of goals or one common goal. If you agendize it at Park, then isn't it true that the rest of the commission just has to sit there and listen to these 2 working bodies talk about some nitty-gritty stuff? The other way, as you describe, is the 2 independent subcommittees working through Director Legge, and she always has to be the go-between. So what I'm wondering is there an in-between solution, which is to create a Brown acted, i.e. a public meeting, special meeting, that is only of the subcommittee members that are working together, because they exceed, they're 4 people or whatever, they do need to be Brown acted, they need to be available for public comment, but not everybody on the commission has to attend.
There might be. Donna, do you have, Director Legge, do you have a better sense of what avenues we could pursue in that situation?
I think
Could
there
we
are a
have an
couple,
announced meeting with an agenda?
I think there are a couple options. One is setting up a special meeting as long as there's a quorum. So in this case, if there were 2 subcommittees, 2 each, that's 4 people. So there could be, you would do it in a workshop format, not a regular meeting. So it's a workshop where you're working through whatever the discussion is. The other way of doing it is getting a representative from each of the subcommittees and meeting with me and having a dialogue that way.
Yeah, kind of like a working group, which is actually a subgroup of a subcommittee, right?
Yeah,
It
or
is.
liaison, subcommittee liaisons. Yeah. So
Yeah, let's
it's going to be case by case, and I don't really see it happening very often.
yeah, if you have something that fits those, that if you have a need in that area, I would say just, reach out to Director Legge and to myself, and we'll find the solution that best fits that particular need. And as long as we're mindful of the Brown Act and transparent and compliant, I think there's probably a couple of ways to go about that. Any other future business items? Yes, Commissioner Wayne.
Would it be appropriate, Director Legge, at the September 8th meeting to get a overview from you guys on the grand opening plans?
Oh yes, definitely.
Good
Definitely.
call. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Happy August.
Thank you.
Thank you.